Hi, today I'm going to be showing you how to install the AE Expanse. Now this is going to be released with Gen 2. Gen 2 adds quite a few new features over the older Expanse versions.
All the flowers go. They say we're supposed to grow, learning from the highs and lows. All eyes lying on me, all begging me to play.
So, to get started, I'll run you through the devices that are in the kit. There are two types of devices. There are normal network devices and an expander net devices. So, normal network devices go in this folder here, called network, and those devices are the expander. The expander is this over here, it's just got a panel. What the expander does is it adds 10 zones to the system. So each expander is 10 zones on the system, and a zone is basically a device. So for example, you'd have like a front door zone, a hallway zone. Basically each room has its own zone, and then you can put PIRs in that zone. An expander adds 10 of those. This here isn't actually on the network, it's the panel. That's the main panel. You can't delete that because all of the device addressing is done by the panel, so you can't delete this. Then there's the various bell boxes up here. So you've got the two versions of each. There's a backlit and a non-backlit version. You'll see the difference if I set it to night and make it dark. As you can see, the non-backlit versions aren't backlit, so the light, just when it's dark, you won't be able to see the logo. Meanwhile, the backlit versions light up at night. So the left one of each is the non-backlit, and then the right of each is backlit. So that's backlit, that's backlit, that's backlit, and then the others aren't. So the different types, there's this one, which is the Lumibel X and the Lumibel XE. This is basically a Pyronix Delta bell. They all do the same sounds and everything. It's just this style of bell box. You can choose whichever you prefer. These are Risco NovaGuard 20s, and then these are the Risco NovaGuard 40s, which are the rectangular versions. So again, they all do exactly the same thing. It's just down to personal preference, whichever one you choose. And you can have an unlimited number of devices on the network, so you can have an unlimited number of expanders, an unlimited number of bell boxes, everything. And yeah, then next, this is an Inferno siren. This is basically just a very loud siren for use indoors. This here is an internal sound, and that's a quieter, smaller sounder for internal use. And that's basically the same, just a bit louder with a strobe on the bottom. Then this is the smoke cloak. This releases smoke when it goes off. I don't really like these, but people requested them, so here they are. It also has a strobe on it. And yeah. Then there's the speaker, which basically all the speaker does is makes the same noises as the keypads. So if the system's in entry, so when it's counting down to going off to let you disarm it, the speakers will beep and all that, and it just basically follows what the keypads are doing. And then there's keypads, which are what you use to interact with the system. So each network device on the network has a config, and we'll run through the different types. So there's bell config for the bell boxes. Top value is the bell name. All this is used for is tamper detection. So if one of these bell boxes is moved or anything like that in the game, it'll set the system off on tamper, and it'll tell you it'll tell you the name of the bell. So for example, front bell box, rear bell box, whatever you want to set it to, doesn't really matter. Bell cutoff is in minutes, how long you want the bell box to go off for before it silences itself. 15 minutes is the default. You can again change it to whatever you want it to. Strobe on set is where when the system is set, the bell boxes will strobe for a few seconds so that you can look up at the bell boxes when you go out of the house and see them strobe to know the system's set. The Inferno and the internal sounders have a similar config, just without a few values. So you see these haven't got the strobe on set because that's not an option on these. And yes, that's basically it for these sounders. The speaker has an even simpler config. It's literally just got speaker name, which is again for tamper. So just name that hallway speaker or something like that, you know. something where you can recognise where it is from the name. Keypad config, there's a bit more to this. So keypad name, again, is just for tamper, so hold keypad, whatever. Invalid attempts allowed is how many times you want someone to be able to input an incorrect code before the system goes off with a keypad tamper. So if this is set to 6, as it is now, if I went and typed in an incorrect code onto the keypad 6 times, it would then set the system off on a code tamper, and then it'd tell you keypad name, code tamper. Speaker, this is where you can disable the keypad speaker. So by default these keypads will make the same noises as the speakers. You can disable that there if you've got a speaker nearby or something like that. Camera lock enabled is this new feature, which I'll demonstrate to you now, which is great for mobile Roblox. Basically what it does is, if it's enabled, when you click the flap of the keypad to open it, to use the keypad, it will actually bring your camera in and lock your camera here. So there you go. It just makes it easier for, if you're on mobile, you can obviously use the keypad, whereas before it was nearly impossible. And it also makes it easier if the keypad's a bit high, because obviously pressing buttons like that on third person is not very easy. But you just click it, opens up, you can press the buttons, whatever. And then when you close it, it takes you out. But obviously not everyone is actually going to want that feature, so you can disable it there. If you set that to false, it'll just work like normal, where you open the flap and nothing happens with the camera. Tamper enabled is where you can disable keypad tamper. So that's just basically what it says. If you want to disable keypad tamper, so if you've, for example, got the keypad fixed to something that moves, you can disable that so the keypad won't go off when that thing moves. Then LED mode is really not something you need to touch. That's just the little LED on the keypad down here. You can change what that does. So in 2, it will change the colour depending on what state the system's in. So when it's armed, it'll go yellow. When it's disarmed, it'll be green. And then 1 is just basically for us, that's debug, which is where it will just flash. The LED will flash green whenever whenever data is sent on the network. So it's not really anything you need to bother with. And that's that for those configs, really. Then the next thing is expander config, but I'm going to go over that a bit more when we've actually gone into installing it. So first thing you can do is thumbnail camera up here at the top. You can delete that, and that gets rid of everything you don't need. So the wall at the back of it, and the bell box and keypad for the thumbnail. Then I'm just going to go ahead and install this. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the panel and the expander. I'm going to just move them to where I want them, so I'm just going to put them in the garage here. And, yep, there goes. Just get them on the wall. There we go. Then I'm going to put a keypad in the hole. So, this is just a free model house, obviously, just for the demo. So I'll just get a few devices placed around the place, and once it comes to actually setting up config wise, I'll be back. Okay, so a quick sort of interlude, I guess. How to install the PIRs. So these are in the expander and then devices. Again, you can have an unlimited number of expanders, but you can only have 10 zones per expander. And what you want to do is you want to get the case. That's the actual PIR itself, and you want to position it wherever you want it, obviously. So I'm just going to put it in the corner in the hole here. There you go. And then you want to get detection zone. This is an invisible part, and you want to basically put this where the PIR is going to be detecting. So this is how it detects. So that basically it uses when a player touches this part, that's how it detects that there's a player there. So just make it, you know, basically cover the area that the PIR covers. But to reduce false alarms, I do recommend not putting it right up to walls So for example, if you put it like there, someone could walk up to this window and put their arm through and trigger it. So it's best to put it a bit away, so it's basically not touching any of the walls, but it's still covering the area properly. Then in each PIR, well, each alarm device basically, there is a value called zone, and this is what zone that device is on. So like I say, there's 10 zones per expander, so you can set this one to 10. I'm going to set this one to 1, and then to set that zone up, I'm going to go into here, expander configuration, this module script, double click on it, and then you see here, we've got expander name, which is just for tamper again, doesn't really matter. And here is zone 1, so you see in zones 1, this is all the configuration for zone 1, and zone 1 is this PIR, because I just set it there, zone 1, expander configuration zone 1. Type is basically the behaviour of the zone, what you want it to do when it's triggered. So there's 0, which is unused, which will basically do nothing, that's for a zone that you're not using. Entry will, when it gets triggered, set the system into entry, so it'll start counting down and let you disarm it. So that's the right type for this zone, because obviously this is going to be the first one to trigger when you walk in the house. Instant is where it'll go off straight away, so it'll just, as soon as that zone's triggered when the system's armed, it will go off. Entry route is for example, say I had a PIR in this garage that was set as an entry, so that would trigger, you'd come into this garage while the system's set, the entry time would start, but then you need to walk all the way through to the hall to get to the keypad. The PIR in here, you don't want the PIR in here to be set to entry, because then someone could smash through this window and it would still give them a timer. So you set this zone here between the entry point and the keypad as entry route. So if that zone is the first one to be triggered, so if the system's just armed normally and that zone is triggered, it'll go off straight away, it'll act as an instant zone. But if the system is in entry, so if someone's walked through the garage, triggered the entry timer, then that zone doesn't do anything. So it lets you walk through fine when the system's in entry, but if you go straight into there while the system's set, it'll go off straight away. Fire is a fire zone, that's for interfacing a fire alarm, for example. It sets the system off into fire, and that's what that is basically. It's a 24-hour zone, so no matter whether the system's set or unset, that'll still trigger. PA audible is again a 24-hour zone, so whether the system's set or unset, zone will always trigger. That's PA audible, so that's for a panic alarm, and that will, because it's audible, it will set off all of the bell boxes and do a full alarm. Zone type 6 is exactly the same, just because it's PA silent, it doesn't set any bell boxes off, it's a silent alarm, so it doesn't actually say on the keypad or anything, it will be completely silent, so that the intruder doesn't know that the alarm's been set off, but it will send a signal to the webhook monitoring, which we'll cover later. 7 is a fire door, that's for a fire door. Basically when the system's armed, if that door's opened, it'll go off straight away. But if the system is unset and that door's opened, it'll go off in alert, which is basically just where the keypads and speakers make the alarm tone, and then when you go to them it'll tell you what door's opened. But it won't set any bell boxes or anything off. So it's like a kind of half alarm. Then alert is a 24-hour zone, and that just sets the system off on alert. That'd be for if you wanted to connect a fire alarm to the system, but you didn't want it to, because when the system's in fire, the bell boxes go off. That'd be if you had a fire alarm connected to the system, but you didn't want the bell boxes to go off. So basically, it's just the fire door, but it'll do it when it's set as well. So it'll just set the keypads off on doing the alarm tone in the speakers as well, but no bell boxes or anything like that. And it'll do that whether it's set or unset. So now going back to the zone config, here, zone 1. So we've set the type, which is type 1, which is entry, which is correct because that's the hallway PIR. So when you come in, it'll start beeping and count down to let you disarm it. The part set options are for part sets. Now what these are is basically options where you can set only a portion of the system. So for example, you might have a night set which sets the whole system apart from the PIR upstairs, something like that. So basically you can have an unlimited number of part sets, but it's set up by default with 2. So If you wanted this zone to be disabled in part set number 1, you'll change that to false. But then in full set it'll still be enabled, and part set 2 it'll still be enabled. But when you set it on part set 1, this PIR will do nothing. But if you're not using part sets, like we're not, you can just delete those like that. Entry time only applies for entry zones, and this is basically the time that you want it to give the user to disarm the system in seconds. So this is when you trigger this PIR on the system set, it'll give you 15 seconds to disarm the system before going off. Name is simply the name of the zone, so this is what it will tell you on the keypad and then the Discord webhook. When it's triggered, it will say whatever the name is, so we'll name this Hall PIR. And then chime is basically only for doors. It's basically so that you can have the system make a tone when it's unset and when that door's open. So it's great for like a front door if you have kids. Obviously this is a real world example, but because when the front door's opened, the alarm system will make a tone to let you know that the door's been opened, and then you know. So this is a number again, and the options are up here. So you can set it to 0, which is silent, or then you've got all these options, which are basically just different tones. We're going to set it to 0 because we don't want it to chime every time you walk through the hallway. As far as other devices goes, I've literally just put an internal sound there, keypad there, bell blocks on the front of the house there, and then a bell blocks on the back/side of the house there. So that's all I've done. And well, actually this will be enough to do the demo really. So after you've set everything up, all this stuff in the kit you can delete. So that PIR, I don't need that. That PIR, I don't need that. Just having a quick look at tags. So here's the tag in the starter pack. Tag code is basically the code that you've set up in core configuration. So 1C, obviously you can't type that in on a keypad because keypads don't have a C. And then in core configuration you set it up there as 1C, and when you present the tag it will basically type in that code and then do whatever you want. Now QuickArm, if QuickArm is set to false, when you present the tag it will simply type in that code and press enter, so it'll bring you to the menu or disarm the system. If QuickArm is set to true, when you present the tag it will type in the code and then press A to start a QuickArm. So basically the QuickArm is really only used for if you've got a player that only needs to arm and disarm the system. So it's recommended really to have a tag and a code, but you can do either. And now we'll move on to actually setting up codes. So here's another configuration file which is called core configuration, and in here there is a lot more configuration. So going from the top, default state is the state that you want the system to be in when the game starts. So 1 is disarmed, 10 is full armed, 11 for part arm 1, 12 for part arm 2, 13 for part arm 3, etc, etc, going up because you can have an unlimited number of part sets. So if I set that to 10, when the game starts the system will be full armed. If I set it to 1 it'll be disarmed. Top banner and bottom banner. The top banner you have to set, the bottom banner you don't have to. This is basically what you want the keypad to display when the system is disarmed. So the top banner you can set to whatever you want, and the bottom banner, like I say, isn't required. So if you leave that blank, the keypad will just display the time and date on the bottom instead of anything, but you can set that if you want to. Now this is important. Number of expanders. If you're having issues with the system not booting up properly, make sure you check this. So obviously I've only got 1 expander, but you can have an unlimited number of expanders on the system, and you need to basically tell the core how many expanders you have on the system. So as you can see I only have 1, so leave that as 1. Full set exit timer. This is how long you want the system to give a player in seconds to get out of the house when you're full setting the system. So that's 20 seconds. So you'll go to the keypad, start it arming, it'll give you 20 seconds, then it'll be armed. Time adjustment is in hours, how many hours your time zone is off of UTC. So basically, if you just go onto your web browser and search your time zone, so London time zone, then you see here it says UTC +1. So that basically means that this time zone is UTC plus 1 hour. So then you need to set this to 1, so that's +1. If your time zone is minus, so say example your time zone is 6 hours before UTC, just put -6, but yeah. Follow DST is where you can enable or disable following daylight savings times. So some time zones don't have daylight savings times, you know, where the clocks go forwards and backwards at different times in the year. So if your time zone doesn't actually follow DST, you can set that to false. But then, you know, for example, my time zone, BST, does follow DST. It sounds confusing, but yeah, so I'll set that to true because my time zone does adjust in different parts of the year. Monitoring mode is up here. Basically, 0 is off, so 0 is no monitoring. All it'll do when it goes off is set off all the bell boxes. 1 is where it will only send alarms, so it'll send you a message when there's an alarm. And 2 is event log, which is where it will send you a message on everything. So basically, if someone disarms the system, it'll send you a message. If someone arms the system, it'll send you a message. If there's an alarm, it'll send you a message. It'll basically send you a message about anything when it's on event log, whereas on alarm stack it will only send you alarms, so it'll only let you know when the system's been triggered. Webhook URL is the actual URL for the Discord webhook, so I'm not going to cover how to set up webhooks in this. I'll probably do a different video on that, but it's simple enough. You basically just create a webhook in your Discord server, then you copy the URL, pop it in there, and it'll work. Part sets. Now this is again quite confusing because you can have unlimited part sets. So you've got names, so these are the names of the part sets. So for example, if you had part set 1 set up as a nighttime set, you just set that to nighttime set. And then on the keypad, when you go past full arm in the options, it'll show nighttime set as an option. And to add more to this, you would literally just go, copy that, paste, change the number to 3, and make sure there is a comma after each line. So, like that. And then you've got 3 part sets. But we're again not using part sets, so I'll just clear those. If you need more help setting up part sets, then leave a comment down below and I'll make a separate video on how to set up part sets. These are just the exit timers, so that's for part set 1, you get 15 seconds to leave the building. Part set 2, you get 15 seconds, you can set it to whatever you want. Obviously if you set it to 0 seconds, then it just sets instantly. And yeah. These are users. So this is basically codes and tags on your system. Now, I think quite a lot of people got confused with this because by default it comes with 5 users set. It can have an unlimited number of users. You can delete or add as many as you want. So what we're going to do is we're going to have user 1 here. So see codes 1 as the code for the system. So we're going to set that to 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to have user 2 as that tag that I just set up. So if you remember, I set the tag code to 1C, 1 and then a capital C. So if I just put that in there, then basically that tag will trigger that user. Then the rest of these, I don't need them, so just delete again. And if I want to add one back, just copy, paste, change the number to 3, and again, make sure you have a comma after every line, because otherwise you'll get that. Where you've got that little incorrect thing there. But again, I'm only going to use 2, so I'll just get rid of the rest of them. Again, these are the names, so I'll name user 1, code, user 2, tag, and then the rest of them I'm not using, so I'll get rid of them. User type, this is basically where you can restrict certain codes or certain tags to only being able to do certain things on the system. So it's all up here. Basically, 0 is a master user, then you've got all the different things. And then 4 is a duress code, which is basically where the user can disarm the alarm, but if they disarm the alarm, it will actually activate a silent alarm when they disarm it, which will then, so it's basically if you're being held at knife point to disarm the alarm, you can put in the duress code, it'll appear as if it's been disarmed, but it's actually sent a message to the Discord webhook monitoring saying, you know, you're being held at knife point. These ones I'm just going to get rid of, because again, I don't have those users set up, and I don't need them. And then I'm just going to set it to 0, so they're both master users. If you want to add a third, so for example, if I wanted to set 5, 6, 7, 8 up as a code, I just add a comma on the end of that, add an extra line, make it number 3, set the code as 5, 6, 7, 8, then I'd have to set a name, So again, just copy that, set the code to 3, set it to code 2, or whatever you want to set it to, and then user type, again, I'll just copy and paste as user type 3, user 3. And there you go. So you can delete or add as many users and part sets as you want, it's unlimited. And yeah, that's really it for the config on the system. Now I think I'll run through how to operate the system. So if I go into play here, and if I go ahead and go in, obviously the system's set to disarmed normally because it's the default state is set to 1, so the system is disarmed and it's showing the message that I set up in the core config. Then if you remember my codes that I set, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So I can put the code in, press enter. That'll bring us to the menu. So you see here it says disarmed and then it tells you your username. So this was set, the name of this user is code, so it says code. Then you can press enter again to get into the main menu. Here we have options such as omit zones. So if you go into omit zones, you can disable zones. So if I wanted to disable that PIR, I click enter, and then you see it says enable instead of disable, and now that PIR is disabled, it won't do anything. And then to re-enable it again, just click enter. Now A is the next button, B is the back button. Basically A goes right, B goes left. So if I press A, it'll go to zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, etc. If I press B, it'll go back. Then I can press escape to go back to the main menu. Now I can press A to go next. Chime enabled. This is where if you've got zones set up as chime and you don't want them to chime anymore, you can just press enter on this. Chime disabled, and now they won't chime. We'll move on from that though. Next there is view log. This is where you can view the event log to basically see what's been happening. So if we click enter, you can see here we've got whole PIR reinstated by user 1 code, and that's when I re-enabled that zone. And we can again use A and B to go forwards and backwards. So B to go backwards. Zone 1, whole PIR, omitted by user 1 code, so that's when I press disable on it. And then the first event will have been core started, which is basically just the game starting. We can go along to full ARM system, and then past that there would be part sets, but obviously we've not got any set up, so the only option we get is full ARM system. And if we press enter, or ent, then it will on the system. So if we press enter, it started counting down, which obviously we can change this timer in the core config. And if we close the door and walk out, leave it to set. Now if you remember in the bell config, the bells are set to strobe on set. So once the system's set, you'll see the bell boxes will strobe. Like that. And as you can hear, it does that chime to confirm the system's set. And now we'll just go in and trigger the PIR. So as this is an entry zone, it's doing a countdown, and then we can put our code in. So to disarm the system, put our code in, and press enter, and then you see the system goes back to being disarmed. Now, to quick arm the system, so this is just to arm the system really quickly, just do a quick full arm, enter your code, and then don't press enter. When it's displaying the 4 asterisks, or however many asterisks your code has, press A. Just straight away, enter your code and then A. That will start the system arming. It will start a full arm, just like we did before, just you don't have to go through the menu. Okay, so now I'll show you how to use tags. So if I just go in and present my tag, so pull it out as a tool and then just push it against the keypad, you see it's basically just type the code in. And because quick arm is set to false, it's not started the system arming, so I can press enter. And as you can see, disarmed, tag, and I can go into the menus just like I did before. Now, if quick arm is set to true, so if I just go out here, quick arm, true, now when I present the keypad, when I present the fob to the keypad, it will just start a full arm straight away. There you go. And now to use the tag to disarm the system, all you have to do is present the tag when it's an entry. So the system's counting down, present the tag to the keypad. And now I'm going to show you how to deal with a alarm, so once the system's gone off. So if I set the system, now the system's set, if I walk in and set it off, so if I let the timer run out, you'll see the bell boxes are going off, and very loud, and all the strobes are flashing. So on the internal sounder, you can't really see it, but it is flashing, and on the bell box, it's flashing. Now, if I go to the keypad, you can see it says alarm, and if I just enter my code and press enter, now it's disarmed the system. So, and then it will show you all the events, just like it did with the log. So you can see it takes us to the last one, which was Hall PIR. Sorry, no, it takes you to the first one. Hall PIR triggered entry. So that's basically it started the timer. Then again, A for forwards, B for backwards. Event 2, Hall PIR entry route. So that was basically, I triggered the PIR while it was an entry, and it just noted it down, didn't do anything. Then again, I triggered it again. Then here you can see that the entry timeout, so that's the timer running out basically. And then here you can see I came back in and it triggered it, so it basically shows you all of the events from start to finish. And then to clear these, you can just press hash. So while it's displaying, just press hash and it'll clear them. Or you can escape, and as you can see, it's got these 2 exclamation marks either side of the bottom display, which basically just tells you that there are events present. And if you go to try and arm it now, it'll say unable to set events present. So to clear those, now that you've exited, you've got to enter your code, press enter, and then when it says here, disarmed 6 events, press B, and then it will show you the events again, and then press hash, and it will clear them, and you can see the exclamation marks are gone, and now it lets me set the system again. Now, just a quick thing, to cancel setting, just enter your code again, press enter, and that stops it. So yeah, that is really it, pretty much, for how to set up and use the Expanse. It's a very powerful system. You've just got to know how to set it up correctly and use it correctly, which is, I will admit, quite hard. It is a tough system to set up, but that is just because it's so advanced. Now, with the Expanse, you do need to have purchased a license. So you've got to go to the SCADA licensing centre. The links will be in the description. And buy a license, which is 200 Robux. That's for a player license, and that will let you use the Expanse in any of your games, an unlimited number of your games basically, so you can use them in any of your games and an unlimited number of your games. Then, if you need a license for a group, so say you've got a Roblox group and you've got your HQ or something that you want an alarm for, you'll have to contact me via Discord, and then I can arrange a group license for you. They're normally a bit more expensive than player licenses, but they're not too bad. And yeah, if you want a free alternative, there is the AE Surge, which is basically the version before this, which has now been discontinued. It isn't anywhere near as advanced, but it is free and will work, basically. It's just it's discontinued, so we don't offer any support for that. And, you know, there'll be no updates or anything. So yeah, there will be a few other videos in this series showing you how to link the DW proc stores with the Expanse and how to do Discord webhook integration. So yeah, thanks for watching. All the links, like I said, will be in the description. Bye.